Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends, enemies, and comrades, I hope you're doing well wherever you are. This is Kenya Revolutionary for another session. This will be a quick session for me, so I won't stay here for long, but I will try to talk to you about what's going on regarding the Rigathi issue, Rigathi Gachagua, for those of you who don't know, who live under a rock. Rigathi Gachagua is in the U.S. Probably he was in a visit in U.S. and I don't know for how long. It's been a month now, or maybe more than a month. But that's not the headlines that we are going to talk about. Of course, we know where he is. But what I want to talk about is one startling statement that he made that actually caused some kind of commotion within the Githeri media that people are discussing. And I called it out and I said, there's no reason really to worry about what this man is saying because it's playing to the gullible. And I know there's a lot of gullible Kenyans out there who do not know what's happening. So it's my responsibility to come here and break it down and help you understand what's actually happening because everyone is, oh, shocked. Oh my God, look what's happening. But anyway, what am I referring to? I'm referring to Gachagua's statements when he said that Ruto negotiated with Al-Shabab and is doing business with them or whatever. He has some deal with Al-Shabab, and that's what put him in hot water with the Americans. As you know, there's this senator from is it Idaho, whatever the case, who has opened this investigation to look into Kenya's involvement with groups like Al-Shabab, so that they can review and see if Kenya is suited to remain as the non-NATO ally. Remember, I told you this whole title, this whole non-NATO ally thing with Kenya, between Kenya and the US or with NATO, it's nothing. It's just a glorified way of saying, hey, Kenya is our little stooge, is the stooge for the West. So if we need something done in Africa, Kenya can always, it has open arms. They will do it without even asking a question. So I explained that. So taking out Kenya from the NATO, whatever, non-NATO as a non-NATO ally, does not make any difference. But I'll get to it. Before we get started, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends and comrades, we have to get to the formalities, okay? If this is your first time, my name is Kenya Revolutionary. We talk about Kenyan politics and world politics as it relates to Kenya. So here today, the topic is Rigathi Gachagua playing the gullible on the Al-Shabaab issue. If this is your first time, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, go ahead and like that video, subscribe, share, like, comment, tell your friends in your WhatsApp political discussions, share this video so they can know about this channel and come up here. And if they want to discuss, the chat is right there. If you want to get in, I will throw you the link. Just turn on your camera and we kind of discuss, okay? But anyway, for those of you who have already subscribed, you know the first order of business, like the video, okay? And after you like the video, what do? Share it, okay? Comment if you want. If you don't want to, that's fine. Maybe some of you are at work, maybe some of you are still at work, leaving work, whatever the case is. Karibuni sana. Let's get to the issue. The issue today is Rigathi Gachagua playing the gullible on the Al-Shabaab issue, okay? Now, let's review here. Gachagua said, and I think it was in Anaheim, California, he made some statements, and he said that he was willing, more than willing, to help with the investigations, the Senate, the Congress, whatever the case is, U.S. lawmakers, helping the investigation. He's willing to testify. So don't be surprised if you see Rigathi Gachagua head to Washington, D.C. to testify in the discussions, in the investigations about the U.S. Mabri, karibu sana. I haven't seen you for a while, brother. I hope you're doing well. Karibu sana, karibu sana. I'm happy to see you. You're alive. Okay? I'm about to talk to you about my girl, Wavinya Ndeti, who is in the whatever in Homa Bay somewhere with Wanga. So stay tuned. We might talk about that. So you know, Wavinya Ndeti is my girl. So we need to talk about that. She's running my chakos like like a boss lady, okay? But anyway, I'll bring you in Mabri whenever you're ready. But anyway, let me just get this off my chest before we get to other stuff, okay? So the lawmakers, U.S. lawmakers, actually reviewing. There's a senator. He's the head of a foreign relation committee, I believe. I forgot his last name. It starts with the R. I didn't even bother to read it. I made a video about this. But anyway, he wanted to open an investigation in order to review Kenya's relationship with NATO, or Kenya's position as a non-NATO ally. Okay. And Rigathi Gachagua, when he was in California, he said it very clearly. He said that he will be more than willing to go testify about William Ruto's administration's involvement or relationship with Al-Shabab, okay? He said that Ruto is, the local nonsense, normal nonsense from Gachagua. It's always something. Today, Ruto is involved with Al-Shabab. Tomorrow, I don't know. I won't be surprised if it comes up tomorrow and says Ruto has been aiding Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. You know what this guy is all about. It's all about just shock jock news cycle, telling us things that he wants people to discuss and be shocked about, okay? We know that Ruto is, a sketchy individual even before he became president, okay? And also, it's not usually, it's not uncommon for nations, administrations, to have negotiations with terrorist organizations. Even Israel, who claim that they don't negotiate with terrorists, they do negotiate with Hamas, okay? United States of America, I mean, they will negotiate. They have back-channel discussions with their so-called enemy. This is not uncommon. Now, I'm not saying that Ruto having a discussion with Al-Shabaab is okay, or Ruto doing business with Al-Shabaab is okay. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm just saying that it's nothing new. It's nothing to raise an eyebrow, okay? But here it is. Gachagua is trying to create not a narrative, but the impression that he's very close with the US, and he wants to endear himself with the US. He wants to be their darling. He's going to rat. He's going to snitch on Ruto so that Ruto can get in trouble. I mentioned in my previous video that the worst the United States can do for Kenya, or what they can do after this investigation. Let's say if they find that Ruto's administration has been deeply involved with this terrorist group Al-Shabaab, whether they are helping them with arms or just, whatever the case is, okay? The worst they can do is put sanctions on the US administration, okay? Put sanctions on Kenyan administration, okay? Just like they did with Zimbabwe, what else was it? Uganda, Zimbabwe. Remember Zimbabwe? They had an issue. I think they kind of did not want to. The land issue that they had with the farmers, the black farmers and the white farmers, whatever the case is. When remember, I always tell this story when Mugabe made that deal. Zimbabwe made that deal with the British government, and the British government gave some land, Zimbabwe indigenous land, to white farmers. Okay. And it was supposed to go for, I don't know how many years, 60 years or something like that. So when the 60 years lapse, Mugabe said, hey, those farmers need to, the time is up. You guys either renew whatever or just, give back the land to the indigenous people. And Tony Blair at the time, who was the president at the time, reneged on his issue. He was like, oh, no, you cannot take them out, whatever. And Mugabe was like, listen, if we are going to take our land, it's up to you as the British government to compensate these farmers, because the deal was these guys was to have this farm for 60 years or whatever the case is, okay? So they reneged on that. And Mugabe said, if you're not going to compensate these farmers, we are going to kick them out, because that was the deal. And the British government, they stuck to their guns. They say, no, we're not doing anything. And Mugabe went ahead and kicked out the farmers. And it caused a brouhaha. And UK and the US slapped some sanctions on Zimbabwe, okay? Same thing, with Russia. When Russia was doing business with Iran and all this stuff, US put some sanctions on Russia, which really didn't dent any economic negative results from that. Actually, it helped Russia, because Russia is a vast country with numerous resources as far as natural gas and all that. So they were not affected, okay? The same thing, remember Iraq, when they were being accused of having nuclear weapons with Saddam and all this stuff, okay? Remember Hans Blix and Colin Powell when they went to 2003 back then when they went to the UN and they were making all Mohammed Al-Badai, if you remember, when they were going to the UN and giving evidence, Scott Ritter, if you remember him, he also, so, once, there was this whole diplomatic wrestling between Iraq and US and whatever the case is, and what followed it later. Iraq was slapped with sanctions, which really didn't affect them that much because, again, Iraq at the time were very rich they're very rich in oil, okay? But of course, there's some countries that can really be affected by sanctions, like Cuba, for example, okay? Under Castro, they survived. Yes, they had a wonderful, healthcare system and all that stuff. United States, slapped them with some sanctions, but they survived, okay, for all this. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying that what could be the worst thing? What could be the worst scenario? Let's say the investigations, the Senate Foreign Committee in the U.S. If they do their investigation, Rigathi Gachagua goes up there in Washington and provides evidence. Not only provide evidence, gives what do you call it? Not statement, but what do you call it? Aende atoe ushahidi, witness or whatever the case, because he was the deputy president at the time, so he must have known some things. Okay, so he can actually go to Washington and sit down and testify in front of the Congress under oath. But it won't mean much because he's a foreigner. He's not like a national. He's not like a U.S. citizen. So whether he lies under oath, he's not risking perjury, okay? Because who will arrest him? He'll go back to Kenya after lying if he has to lie. But I'm saying, if he goes to testify in Washington before Senate, okay, Foreign Council, Foreign Committee, whatever the case is, okay, if he goes and the investigation takes place, okay, let's assume they find overwhelming evidence that Ruto's regime has been deeply involved with this terrorist organization called Al-Shabab. What could be the worst outcome for this administration? Like I say, they're not going to bomb Kenya anytime soon, okay? That's just not realistic. That's just out, okay? Kenya is not a big of a deal like that, all right? Number two, they are not going to take out Ruto like you think they would. For example, use a military. They can do that. Yes, they can do that. Yes, that's possible. But what is most likely to happen is they will first start with sanctions. Okay, that is the number one thing that can start. They can use sanctions. Say, hey, listen, since the Kenyan administration, because regardless of what you say, I'll come to I'll come to what's the name? Shaja Deafé. I can't even say it. The American ambassador, the acting American ambassador to Kenya. I'll come to her statements, which actually literally pours water on everything that Gachagua said, okay? But I'll come to that. So what I'm trying to say is this. In the worst case scenario, if Ruto is found, there's evidence, the Senate finds that Ruto is deeply involved with Al-Shabaab, the most likely outcome that will happen right now is that the U.S. will probably, slap sanctions on Kenya regime, okay? Which will actually affect the Kenyan wananchi people, not the administration. These guys have billions. They can always go to UAE and party on the weekends, gamble, come back and do all that stuff. The people who are up down there, because when you slap with sanctions, the sanctions might say that the sanction might dictate that Kenya cannot do business with the Western governments. They cannot do it with the Brits. They cannot do it with France or whatever the case is, NATO, whatever, whoever. Okay, and we deeply rely on these Western countries to do business, trade. Okay, and they can warn the other African stooges, Western stooges, to not do business with Kenya. So it will affect Kenya drastically, just like Cuba was affected with the sanctions. Okay, so that's the most likely outcome to come in. Now, when you talk about regime change, that can happen later. Kenya is two years away from the next election. So if Americans want to really take him out, what they will do is sponsor the opposition or coup d'etat. Kenya does not have a history of a coup d'etat, so I do not think that will get to that point. But what I think they can do is sponsor an opposition. Now, the reason why I think all this will not happen is basically because of what the acting American ambassador to Kenya came out and said. She reaffirmed the position of the American government to Kenya. Okay? What did she say? What did this lady say? She came up and basically confirmed that Kenya is the number one, the Kenyan administration is the number one Western puppet in Africa. That's basically what she said. Listen, I'm paraphrasing what she said. Did you hear what she said? It was startling for some of you, not to me. Absolutely, I was not surprised. I was like, why is everyone acting surprised on Twitter that this lady said what she said? But I know why you're surprised, because you thought that Rigathi and I enjoy. Let me tell you something. This is what I'm trying to break it down to you, so I want you to understand this. Let me take a sip of my coffee. It's morning. Well, it's afternoon. It's evening somewhere, wherever I am. But let me take a sip of my coffee. Let me explain something to you so you can understand the kind of politics that is being played here. And the victim of all this political drama is you, the news consumer who is listening to this Githeri media, and you're being hyped up. Now, let me just break it down so I can, and make you understand clearly what's happening here, okay? When Rigathi Gachagua made those statements and said, hey, I am willing to testify in front of Congress to testify that Ruto was actually involved. I'm ready to aid the Congress, the US Senate's investigations into Kenya's involvement with Al-Shabab. He said that, okay? And like I said, I will not be surprised if Rigathi Gachagua goes to Washington, D.C., and testifies before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I will not be surprised. If anything, I think that's in the works. That's why he's still in the US. I will not be surprised if this guy goes to Washington. I know it will make news and everyone will be like, oh my God, Ruto ako kwa shida. Because you do not know better. You don't know how politics works, right? You don't know how politics works, okay? That's why you'll be like, too excited. Oh, Ruto. Like I saw when Rigathi Gachagua made those statements, everyone was like, oh, the Americans Ruto is in trouble. Atatolewa. And I told you people, remember when I told you, go look at my videos from last week. Go look at my video for last week. I'm giving you 2 seconds. Go look at my videos from 2 weeks. Like last week, I said Kenya's position as non-NATO ally does not mean zilch. It doesn't mean anything. It does not. Kenya has always been a stooge of the West. It's a British property, private company. Meg Whitman even said that in one of our press rounds in Spice FM. And she had to correct herself very quickly. She said Kenya is a private company. I don't think you guys remember when she said this. But anyway, I told you, I want to build my case here. Listen to me. You are the jury. I'm the prosecutor here. And I want to build my case. So listen carefully and hit those like buttons so I can explain this. I'll be very brief and succinct. Okay? Kenya has always been a stooge for the West. That's why you see Bill Gates can come there and announce that there'll be an 8-year contraceptive introduced in Kenya. Knowing the history of this evil man, there's cases of polio injections and tablets, whatever the case he was doing in India. Children are being born deformed with deformities because of the polio shots that Bill Gates went up there and introduced in India. This is the same guy who has been banned in some countries in South America because he was introducing some shots in South America that ended up to women being infertile. They cannot produce children. They can have to. Bill Gates cannot go to some countries in South America. He's been banned for all these exercises. His genocidal shots that he's giving people third world countries. But here it is in Kenya. He's been introducing with open arms, and even Mudavadi said some years back that Bill Gates should be coming in Kenya without any restrictions, visa restrictions. Okay? So that is to illustrate to you that Kenya is fully under the control. It's an extension of the Western globalist agenda regime. Okay? Now, what is happening with Gachagua? When Gachagua made those statements and said, oh, listen, I'm willing to go testify and produce evidence that Ruto's administration is involved with Shabab, most of you started jumping around like headless chicken, thinking that Ruto is going to be in trouble and the Americans, the Trump regime will turn against Ruto for this. No, it won't. Remember what Putin said. I want to start there, so because I'm building my case, I want you to pay attention. For those of you, focus. I want to make sure you understand this. Remember what Putin said a few months ago. What did he say? He said 90% of the terrorist organizations in the world are what? Who is Ninio? Who is financing them? Who is financing them? Oh, you're so slow. Let me help you. Putin said that. He came out and said 90% of these terrorist organizations you see in the world are what? Are funded by the CIA and the Mossad. That's what Putin said. Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabab, even Al-Shabab, there's actually a documentary. Mohammed Farah Aidid, remember him? Go look at what's happening in Somalia. Go see who's behind Al-Shabab. It has CIA written all over it. Now, this is not coming from me. There's a bunch of books that have been written about clandestine operations, not only in Africa, but in Southern America and other places. And the CIA involvement in all these kind of movements, terrorist organizations in Europe, in US, in South America, and in Africa. You understand? Okay? So let's get that clear. Who is funding Al-Shabaab? I'll leave it there. Tuweke breaks hapo. Put a mental note. Who is funding Al-Shabaab? Mental note there. I'm coming. I'm chini. Kunywa maji. Kama ni pombe kunywa. I'm taking you there. I'm taking you there. Okay? So now, this Gachagua comes out and say, I'm willing to testify that Ruto is involved with Al-Shabaab. Now, the senator, the foreign chief chairman of the I think his name is Rash or something, Rash, whatever his name. He's from Idaho or somewhere. Okay? The Republican guy. Okay? He said that we need to look at, evaluate Kenya's relationship with the NATO. Okay? Because Kenya is considered a NATO ally, even though it's a non-NATO nation, because it doesn't fall geographically. Kenya cannot be part of NATO. Okay, all right, we've established that, right? Now, how did Kenya become a non-NATO ally? How did it become that? Who declared it? It was through an executive order made by Joe Biden. It was an executive order made by Joe Biden, the former president of the US, now former, who just left, okay? Now, to undo an executive order, it can simply be undone by another executive order, okay? Trump can simply go up there and say, hey, listen, I'm rubbishing this whole non-NATO ally thing, executive order that was penned down by Joe Biden, okay? So it's as simple as that. With a pen, you know, that it can be undone, okay? It doesn't require the Congress to go up there and, you know, look into this and look into that and all that stuff, okay? So the question will be, why is the Congress looking into this? What's the whole point with it? What's going on? Somebody's on the dark, okay? Of course, you know, when it comes to geopolitics, you know, yes, Trump can sign it off, but he wants to make sure that if they're going to sign off this non-NATO ally position with Kenya, they want to justify why they're doing it, okay? They have to justify why they're doing it. So they want to look at it and see what if Kenya is really involved with it. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is because the United States do not want to be seen as a country that is supporting a corrupt regime like Ruto's regime. You understand what I'm saying? I'll repeat this. Mnashika lakini, I hope you have the mental notes that I'm building my case. I'll wrap it up. I'll wrap it up in a few minutes. Okay? They do not want to be seen as aiding and having a close working relationship with a corrupt regime like Ruto's regime. So they have to use the Senate Foreign Committee, whatever, Foreign Affairs Committee, to investigate, and probably will find that there is links between the Kenyan administration and the Shabab. Then after that, they shall distance themselves from Ruto's regime in public. In what? In public. Do you hear me? In public, officially, this administration, Trump administration, will be very clear not being seen as to be doing business or causing up diplomatically with Ruto's regime. So they want the Congress to look into this relationship, if there's a possible relationship with Al-Shabaab, and see what the relationship is with Al-Shabaab and Kenya's administration. And if it's found that there's enough evidence, they shall distance themselves. They'll have not deep diplomatic ties, but it will be, they'll not be as close as the previous regime was. Let me just put it that way, okay? To justify, and it will be illustrated by removing Kenya as a non-NATO ally. But, and I'm using capital B-U-T, but through backdoor diplomatic channels, the relationship between the US and Kenya will still be 100% on par, ongoing. Go read the book by Christopher Hitchens. It's called, I think it's called The Case of the Case of Henry Kissinger. The Case Against Henry Kissinger, I think that's what's the name. And it explains to you the back channel diplomatic dealings between the Nixon administration before even they came to power, through Nixon and the Viet Congs up there. And they had a meeting in Paris, whatever. So in public, they were saying, oh, we are not having any relationship with those people. We don't, you know, those are terrorists. They're ones who are causing problems there in Vietnam. But through the back channels, they were actually having relationships. Now, let me take you quickly. Now, have you, umeshika mpaka hapo? Mko sawa? Mko sawa? I hope you're following closely, okay? I want to put you, sita wakalisha hapa for a long time, okay? Now, While you people are happy at the Gachagua followers or whatever the case is, people who are buying this Gachagua nonsense, okay? You know, some of you're buying Gachagua's nonsense for different reasons, okay? There are people who like Gachagua because Gachagua is from their tribe. There are some people who just like Gachagua because they hate Ruto for whatever, it's understandable, okay? It's understandable. But for those of you who are like actually buying and lapping up this nonsense by Gachagua, you fail to understand this. Like I said it in my previous video. I say, Ruto will not jeopardize the millions and billions of dollars that he has looted from the Kenyan regime, from the Kenyan government, taxpayers' money, whether it's parastatals or whatever, all these deals that he's making with UAE and all this stuff, he will not give up those billions or risk giving up that by turning against the US government. He will not do that. Even if he's talking about China and all this stuff, and we are like, oh, Ruto is turning to China, whatever. No, he will not. Because he has a clear understanding that if he turns to the Chinese fully, the Brits and the Americans will take him out. And they might even open the ICC cases, look into his fund an internal investigation. All of a sudden, you see that Ninio inafanya kazi. EACC, okay? And Ruto will be brought to justice or whatever the case. They'll humiliate him if it dares try to give up Kenya to the Chinese or whatever the case is, okay? Okay, that is an understanding. Remember, these people, that's the reason why these people will watch ICC. That's the reason why ICC was built to jail African presidents who do not want to align themselves with Western governments. I'll repeat this. ICC was built for African presidents that do not want to align themselves with the West. So ukileta kichwa, ukimea pembe, they'll build a case against you of corruption and murders and all this stuff. They wanakupeleka huko ICC, wanafungua case. They can open that case anytime. Anytime. So you have to play ball. Now, to prove my point, the American ambassador to Kenya, Carla Benini, I think she's Italian-American. It sounds like an Italian name, okay? She came out and confirmed that Kenya, Ruto, is their #1 stooge. Usikuwa na wasiwasi Ruto. Why was she saying? She even went and said, if you want our policies, if you want to implement something in Africa, Kenya is always the first one. What? She literally said, if we are so close with Kenya, tukijaribu kuimplement something, our policies or whatever the case is, tunaianzanga na Kenya. Kenya is the test center ya kila kitu. That's what she said. I'm not making this up. I'll have another session later on where I'll play this clip so you can see what she actually said. Just to give you an illustration of how deep our leaders, this administration, Ruto, is immersed, totally sold out to the West. That's what she said. Anything they want to try in Africa, they try it first in Kenya. Anything. Wakitaka kuanza hizo vitu za kudunga watu shindano, tunaanza na Kenya. Wakitaka kudunga ng'ombe shindano, tunaanza na Kenya. Wakitaka kuleta mambo ya wanaume kulala na wanaume, wanawake kulala na tunaanza na Kenya. Every test. Why? Kenyans, Kenyan leaders, lawmakers, presidents from Jomo, Moi, Kebake, Uhuru, now Ruto are totally sold out to the West. Niliwaambia totally. Hata Gachagua ambaye anaongea saa hizi. Gachagua, if you look at his statements of 2 years ago, alikuwa anajifanya ati mnaenda kulambalamba wazungu huko sijui nini, hata mnasumbua wazungu hivi sijui nini. Now look at him. Amesimama hapo ni kama yeye ndio prefect ambaye amekuwa appointed na wazungu ati I'm even willing to go testify. What I'm trying to say is this. Ruto is firmly backed by the West. William Asamoei Ruto is firmly backed by the West. Rigathi Gachagua is firmly backed by the West. Raila Odinga is firmly backed by the West. Martha Karua is firmly backed by the West. Matiang'i Okengo, whatever his name is firmly backed by the West. Kalonzo Musyoka is firmly backed by the West. Eugene Wamalwa is firmly backed by the West. So, what am I trying to say in not so many words? What I'm trying to say is that Gachagua is playing a very clever game here. I told you Gachagua and Ruto are not enemies. Gachagua and Raila Odinga are not enemies. Sina I told you, niliwaambia juzi vile Raila alikuwa anaongea kwa ile funeral. And I told you, Raila was saying these things about Gachagua to give Gachagua another ammunition, ndio aende akaongee to reply to Raila so that it can make headlines. Because Gachagua is being prepped up to take over from Ruto in 2032. Niliwaambia about that clip that ambayo Uhuru Kenyatta, when he was drunk, he made that statement. Alisema 10 yangu, 10 ya Ruto, alafu 10 ya Gacha, alafu he stopped himself. I tried to look for ilikuwa kwa Nation. I tried to find that clip. Ilifutwa kila pahali. Ndio maana uliona NIS walikuja hapa juzi ambao they are running other channel. Walikuja hapa wakaniambia Gachagua is going to be president. They know. Hii kitu imepangwa. Hao watu ni Freemason, Mason. Wanapanganga hizi vitu. Na mababa zao, their leaders are in England. Wanapanganga hizi vitu 10 years down the line. What Gachagua is doing that is fooling a lot of Kenyans, especially his followers, ni kwamba anajiposition as a person who's very anti-government, anti-Ruto. But he has no plan for Kenya. So what he has to do is to constantly say outlandish things about Ruto. And when he says that he's going to aid the American lawmakers in the investigation, looking into the dealings between Ruto's regime and Shabab, it earns him the headlines in Kenya. If they see Gachagua go to Senate, akienda kutestify huko Senate, huko US, it will grab headlines. It's a big deal in Kenya. And Wakenya wengi will be excited saying, hey, inaonekana kuwa Gachagua amechaguliwa na Waamerikani kama mtu ambaye anaenda kutoa Ruto. And you can hear some of these Gachaguarites, wanasema ati, wanajifanya ati, you know, we don't want Gachagua, but let's just help Gachagua help us remove Ruto. Ni ile uongo tunadanganywa. Ati let's just support Gachagua atusaidie kutoa Ruto. As if we fail to understand that Gachagua played a pivotal role into landing us where we are economically and everything. Ile shida yote ambayo Kenya iko nayo, Gachagua had a big part to play in this. Gachagua was involved in extrajudicial killings. Gachagua has been involved in land grabbing. Gachagua has been involved in violating Kenyans' human rights. Gachagua has been involved in corruption. Gachagua is overtly being tribalistic, just like his boss Ruto, just as like his former boss Uhuru Kenyatta, just like his idol Kebake, just like his former godfather Moi, just like his uncle Jomo Kenyatta, just like his buddy conman Raila Odinga, who is pretending he's fighting. Niliwambia kwa ile video ingine ati Raila said what he said in that funeral to give Gachagua talking points. Na Gachagua ata ping pong back talking about Raila. Raila now will come back 2 days or today or tomorrow or the next hour to talk about Gachagua again. Why? It is meant to create political drama. No solutions. Ni drama from evening to morning, morning to evening, political drama. Nobody's talking about how we can stop borrowing, how we can stop extrajudicial killings, how we can stop ukabila, corruption, how we can improve the economy. Forget that nonsense that happened in State House. That was nothing but everyone knowing political circus. Munanisikia? So what I'm saying is this, in not so many words, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends, enemies, and comrades. This is a play. It is a play designed to fool the gullible, those who are falling into this tribal nonsense, to fool them that the difference between Gachagua and Ruto is so deep to a point where Gachagua is willing to go to the US Senate and testify against Ruto. While in reality, as it has been confirmed by the American ambassador to Kenya, that Ruto is still their darling. And anything that is to happen in Africa, it starts through Kenya. That's how deep Ruto is immersed into this globalist agenda. So whether Gachagua goes to the Congress and testifies against Ruto regime, it will be inconsequential, because the fact remains that the Brits and the US have to keep Kenya as their stooge in order to operate in the eastern region of Africa. That's why they have 3 or more military bases in Kenya. That way they can operate from Kenya into Kismayu, huko Somalia, dishing out money to Shabab. That way they can control the Somali region, Somaliland, Somali the country. That way they can control Uganda's gold through Museveni, who has been a sellout since 1982. Go look at his video when he was basically kneeling down, begging Ronald Reagan to help him take out Gaddafi. If anything, it was Museveni who lied to Gaddafi that he needs to stop his nuclear program. And once Gaddafi gave up on that, that's when they attacked him through the Obama and Hillary Clinton taking out Gaddafi. Gaddafi, who had a vision of united Africa, even though he was also a pro-Arab, anti-black. You understand what I'm saying? So in mchezo between Ruto, Raila, and the Gachagua. But nyinyi hamuyoni, nyinyi mnafurahia kama wajinga ati, Gachagua anaenda kusaidia kutoa Ruto. Ati anaenda kumshtaki kwa Amerikani, alafu Amerikani watatoa Ruto. How stupid are you? Nyinyi hamtumiangi akili. If Ruto was against the US or their diplomatic ties, diplomacy had fallen between the US and Kenya, the American ambassador would have come out and made a very clear statement saying that their position is not in line with the administration, Ruto's administration. And they would have warned Ruto. Because to Ruto is no threat to American government. They can tell him anything. Wanaweza kuambia Ruto, kesho uvae suti ya red, na atavaa. If they tell him jump, he'll ask how high. And like I said, it is in the best. Ruto cannot afford to be at odds with the British government and the US government. Because those are his bosses. Those are the people who put him there. Okay. Simulisikia alitumia ile ninio inaitwaje? What's that ninio alitua? What's that program that he used that was developed by the Israelis that helped him win the election and help him spy on Uhuru Kenyatta and every other politician? What is it called? What's that program that is ninio? It's called, hebu niambie. Who developed that program? Sin Mossad wa Israeli. Na walipatia Ruto atumie hiyo kitu. Why? And Mossad and CIA is one thing. There's no difference. Mossad, MI6, and CIA is one thing. Their interest is basically the same. Na kwa nini walipatia Ruto hiyo kitu akatumia shinde elections? How? Why? Pigeni hesabu bwana. Tumieni kichwa. Think. Kabla mjapiga makelele hapa kama washenzi. Ruto is in power because the West want him in power. Now, the Gen Z threatened to remove Ruto. Let me tell you something about the Gen Z before. I will get another name from Gen Z. Gen Z is what nikwambie kwa nini Gen Z wanajaribu kuwa Gen Z na kukumaliza Gen Z. Let me tell you something. Wacha nikunywe coffee kidogo tuendelee. The reason why they want to finish Gen Z, unajua watu ambao walikuwa na sponsor Gen Z, the Jimmy Wanjigis, probably with even Kenyatta's, they were banking on the Gen Zs to remove Ruto, then put in somebody who is one of them, one of the political elites. But what happened is this. These Gen Zs, even though they were being backed by the Jimmy Wanjigis and probably Kenyatta's, and I have no proof, I'm just going by what Jimmy Wanjigi said. He said he was helping Gen Zs. What they realized is the Gen Zs were not just saying, Ruto must go. Gen Zs also were turning their guns on the Jimmy Wanjigis and the Kenyatta's and the Gachaguas and everybody. And they realized that, you know what? It might not be safe to help these Gen Zs take out Ruto, because once they're done with Ruto, they will turn their guns on us. You know, it's not funny when the rabbit has the gun. Unajua hiyo msemo? It's not fun when the rabbit has the gun. Simshasikia hiyo msemo? You've heard that say? Yeah. Walianza ati wanapatia Gen Z, we are supporting Gen Z, tutapatia pesa na nini na but wakaangalia wakasema Jenzi wakitoa Ruto, hawa Jenzi watatugeuka hata sisi. We are not safe. We are better off. Tuacha Ruto, tulete makelele hapa, alafu tulete conclave conclave ya Raila. Kwa sababu conclave will accommodate everybody. If you remember, on 25th June 2024, Megan Whitman at that time aliingia kwa ndege, alisema naishia. She probably got intel that there's a possible people's coup d'etat. People are taking their power back from Ruto regime. Hata Raila mwenyewe alishangaa. No one knew where this thing was going. The elites, they panic when they're not in power, when they don't have control anymore. Because once they lose control, anything can happen because they can be brought to the books, to justice. So Raila had to organize his goons to help the nini serikali, the police, and the army, as some army members that Ruto used kumaliza hawa majenzi. So even though our kina Jimmy Wanjigi financed these Gen Zs to go out there to take Ruto, the thing was going out of control. Hawa majenzi walikuwa nageuka wanasema, hey, musikiri, we shall stop with Ruto. We shall remove Ruto, yes. But kufa makanga, kufa dereva. Na abiria pia. Abiria being the political elites. Understand what I'm saying? So to come back to the Ninio, and I don't want you to miss this point, the point that I'm reiterating here, that I want you to get and master and have it crystallize in your minds, in your medulla. Ni hivi. Stop getting excited with what Rigathi Gachagua is saying. It is part of the game that the political class are playing. Ndio maana nilikuambia Murkomen alienda kaongea mambo ya Shabab. Na utaona, they have to keep on entertaining you through this drama because they have nothing to offer Kenyans as far as real, tangible, economical process that can revolutionize majority, millions of Kenyans' lives. So they have to maintain the political drama. Leo ni Rigathi, kesho ni Raila. After Raila, leo Murkomen. Murkomen, Lagat. Ivo. Mwisho wa mwezi tutaenda by election. Keep them occupied, entertained by easy political drama. Wakitoka hapo wanaongea huku Sifuna. How Sifuna leaving ODM, how does that help Kenyan people? How does that help Wakenya? Now, the political drama ingine ni hii Murkomen sana sema ati nani akirudi aweke statement. It's also political drama. Gachagua will be back. Utaona watatuma polisi watampeleka huko ati sijui aende akatoe statement. Again, it's distraction. While all this is happening, no one is putting concentration in the fact that what we need is to overhaul the system. Kutoa system yote by first occupying State House. Tutoe Ruto kwa State House, Ikulu, na tukimaliza na Ruto, tutoe Raila, akwae ninio. Tukishatoa Raila, tutoe Gachagua. Tukishatoa Gachagua, tutoe Uhuru. Na wengine wote, wanasiasa wote, tuwapeleke jela. But they don't want you to concentrate in that. So they will continue with the political drama. Nani, Gachagua, before he comes to Kenya, I won't be surprised if he goes to testify in Congress. He will. Ataenda huko Senate Committee, Foreign kutoa. Now it will be big news in Kenya. Hey, Gachagua have gone to sijui nini. Right? Lakini video. Nyinyi mtarukaruka mtasema, hey, Ruto is finished. Ruto is finished. Gachagua is finishing Ruto. Hey, Gachagua is finishing Ruto. Yeah. but mnapangwa. You don't see the big picture. Alafu atarudi Kenya. He will go, watatuma hata polisi 40 waende wakaarrest Gachagua. Wampeleke DCI akatoe statement ya Al-Shabab. And it will make news. Itakuwa ina trend. Tear gas imetupwa, sijui nini. Alafu Gachagua will have another rally huko sijui wapi. It will trend he will sound so defiant. Ati Ruto anataka unimaliza. Ruto is harassing me. I'm a truthful man. He will be built by the media as this hero. He's standing up to Ruto, who is corrupt. And you can see the narrative of our Gachaguans, who are basically pro these corrupt elites. Wataanza kusema, let's just support Gachagua because Gachagua is going to help us remove Ruto. Hiyo ndio narrative nataka kusikia saa hizi. To support to Gachagua, Gachagua is the only one who can remove Ruto. He can deal with Raila and Ruto. So let's support him atusaidie kutoa Ruto. Failing to understand that Gachagua is part of the very system that you're dealing with, that is keeping you in oppression. That is how they're playing it. So in summation, what I'm trying to say is this. The American ambassador to US has confirmed to you that Ruto is safe. Ruto is very much part and parcel of their agenda. Ruto haendi mahali. Kama ni kumtoa, ni watu wa Kenya ndio watamtoa, the majority of people tumtoa. But as far as him being a Western stooge, it's set in stone. Ni mtu wao. He's their confidant. He's not going anywhere. That is basically what he's saying. But Nani Gachagua is still running with this nenio. Hizi mchezo za town. Hizi inaitwaje? What do you call it? Gimmicks. Ni gimmicks kabisa. Designed to fool you to think that Gachagua is na Ruto hawasikizani. So wewe utakaa hapo utasema Gachagua ameenda mpaka huko US Senate kwenda kumdakua Ruto. You'll see, but it is gimmicks. Wherever he goes, you've had people, a lot of Kenyans who have complained. If hata Oscar Sudi amesema, apparently Oscar Sudi is in US. Oscar Sudi uko wapi? Nataka kutafuta wewe. Sudi, engineer, nitafute hata mimi. Na kutafuta. Sudi, nitafute. Anyway, what I'm saying is this. Even Sudi has mentioned what a lot of Kenyan people who live in US have said. That these meetings that Gachagua is coming to, they're very controlled. Hawataki waulizwe maswali nyeti. Ile maswali kali. Whether it's Matiang'i or Gachagua. Gachagua learned his lesson when that young lady asked a question. And we saw how empty Gachagua was. So they learned their lesson. They're not going to let people ask them the real tough questions. So they have controlled question and answers in your session. Okay? Wanaenda wanasema upuzi yao alafu wanaishia. Nobody ask them anything. Ukitaka kuuliza swali andika hapo ndio waende wasome hizo maswali alafu ninio. Go listen to the interview by that young lady. How they were stopped from asking Matiang'i questions. They were stopped from asking Gachagua questions. You understand me? Because it is all a gimmick. They know. It's a gimmick that they want to continue having. Kujifanya ati they're anti-Ruto, but we're in the same club with Ruto. So do not be fooled by any Matiang'i or Gachagua. They are with Ruto and Raila. It is a game that they are playing. Because they are preparing, they are propping up Gachagua through notoriety, using the media, for 2032 as the person who will take over from Ruto. This had been predicted by Uhuru Kenyatta, who is the #1 British agent in Kenya. The Kenyatta family is a British agency. They were put in Kenya to oversee the interests of the British. That's why they are the richest family in Kenya. That's why you see, of all the politicians, the British High Commissioner and the American ambassador goes to visit Uhuru Kenyatta personally in his personal residence in Ishaweri. Something that no British High Commissioner or American ambassador would do for any politician in Kenya. They have to only go to Ishaweri to visit the Kenyatta family. Why? Because the Kenyatta family are the first family chosen by the British Empire to oversee the corporation that is called East African Corporation. Their headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya. And their chief stooge is the Kenyattas. Not Ruto. Ruto is also part of it. Ruto is the stooge to be there. That's why you see Ruto has to go to Ishaweri and visit Kenyatta. Uhuru. Uhuru Kenyatta can afford to go to State House. Kama amevaa chupi peke yake, and he doesn't care because he knows the hierarchical order of power in Kenya. It is the Kenyattas than everybody else. Look at everybody who is working, everybody who is running for politics in Kenya. Everybody. Our kina Kalonzo. Listen to me. Kalonzo used to work for Uhuru. Uhuru alikuwa anamlipa hapo pesa kidogo akuja simame hapo, akuwa vice president, whatever the case is. Look at Natembea. Natembea was appointed by Ruto. Matiangi, Ruto stooge. Huyu Wamunyoro. Wamunyoro was a personal assistant of Uhuru Kenyatta. Wamalwa was appointed by Uhuru Kenyatta. These are people who are working for Uhuru Kenyatta, the Kenyatta family. That's why they are paraded as your next option to vote for as the head of states, because they are trusted to continue the globalist agenda in Kenya, which has to be implemented and overseen by the Kenyatta family, who have to say yes or no. Because the Kenyatta family are the people who were put there by the British Empire to look over their interest in Kenya to make sure it works. That's why everyone has to pay homage to Uhuru at Ishaweri. Even the British High Commissioner and the American ambassador, they have to negotiate with Uhuru. He's a personal friend of King Charles. Understand how politics works in Kenya. Do not be fooled by the circus of Gachagua being here talking about nini. Don't we know the history of Gachagua? All of a sudden, he isn't your revolution and anataka kutoa nini Ruto. Don't be fooled. Don't be stupid. But you're willing to be stupid because Gachagua ni mtu wenu. Si uko na hiyo ujinga. Gachagua ni mtu wetu. So let's continue. Gachagua is I'm from Wamunyoro. Mi pia ni Wamunyoro. Let him go. Because I hate Ruto. Unashangilia Raila because Raila ni mtu wenu. Agwambo Teregenye. He's lying to you day and night. Conclave. Conclave. Ruto is uliona pikipiki vile kwa nadanga vijana. Understand the real politics of Kenya before you start clapping at these clowns like Matiang'i, clowns like Martha Karua, clowns like Gachagua, clowns like Raila Odinga, clowns like William Samoei Ruto, clowns like Wamalwa, clowns like Kalonzo Musyoka. The statement by the American ambassador to Kenya that the statement that she made sealed it for me and to any reasonable, objective observer of politics that Kenya under Ruto is fully under the globalist control. So whatever Gachagua is doing in the US, talking about Shabab, is inconsequential. Like I said, Kenya being a non-NATO ally or not does not matter. The truth is, if the British or American or the globalist want something done in Kenya or Kenya to do something, it will be done without question, whether Kenya is a non-ally or not. Because like the British, like the American ambassador have confirmed, Kenya is fully under the globalist control. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends and comrades, my name is Kenya Revolutionary. I'll stop here. So do me a favor, subscribe, like, share, comment. Share it with your friends so they can see it. Now, wake your notification on. So every time I come in, you can always find me here. So next time you speak about politics, and I want to pick up politics in these other channels, have that in the back of your mind. Chambua siasa in a high level. Wacha kuchambua siasa ukisikia Wamunyoro hapa anapiga makelele na zio puzi zake. What's his history? What is Wamunyoro's history? CV yake onyeshe. Where are his revolutionary credentials that he can stand up and say that I've always been the right side of history. I've always defended the Kenyan people. Was he not the one who was telling nini ati ataua nini of Gen Zs? Same thing with Ruto. Kwani amjui Ruto alikuwa ni muuaji? Kenyatta from his father alikuwa anaua watu kwa kina Tomboya huko. Akaua watu huko ninio na Matiangi huko ninio. Rivayala. These are the people who are running for president in Kenya. Na umesimama hapa tunaenda kuwapigia kura. Unapigia, let me not even abuse you. Subscribe, share, like, comment. I get pissed off when I think about how stupid some of us are. Or how much we applaud these clowns, killers. Put the notification on so next time I come in, you can find me here. Subscribe, share, like, comment, do all the good stuff. My name is Kenya Revolutionary. Viva! I'll talk to you later.